And before we get started, it is pasta night at Larry's. Special tonight, $9.99. Oh, there's the cooking.
Oh, nice. When will the table be ready? We made a reservation a week ago, Larry.
That Larry's, not the other Larry.
Larry,
I have nothing to say.
This should be just retitled "Cooking with Larry."
Hey, I'd love it. I'd love it. You know, I married the right woman. She lets me cook.
I've had I've had a granola all day. So I don't want to see food.
All right, so you let me know. You let me know. I'll deliver.
Make this meeting quick, Joe Garrett.
Yeah, well, that's the thought there. I think we're waiting on where's Ward 4? Is that a farmer? Not around. All right. Well, we'll get started on this.
I have a question for Dan. How do you do it while you're driving?
Right now I'm not driving, but my kid just got back in the car, so I'm going to start driving, which means I'm going to turn my video off.
Well, but I mean, like, do you use your iPad or you use your phone?
I got my phone going, and I have the Bluetooth hooked up through the phone, so I can just hear it through the speakers of the car.
There he is.
Hey. Okay, well, I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get started here, and hopefully we'll be able to end quick. So let's get started with the October 14th meeting of the Admin Public Works Committee. So first item on the agenda, the roll call. Carla?
Okay, can you guys all hear me?
We sure can.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Garitano,
Present.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Here.
Councilmember Brost,
Here.
Councilmember Edens,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer, Councilmember Flasher.
I'm here.
I saw you. Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Remy.
Present.
Hey, Dan, if you can just turn your camera on and just say you're present, I think we just have to see video for roll call type votes.
Here.
Okay.
I saw him a minute ago anyway, so we're good.
Thank you. All right, good. We've got the roll call done. Second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for September 8th. Is there a motion for approval? Made by Councilmember Eden, seconded by Councilmember Remy. Any comments on the minutes? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Any abstain? All right, the minutes are approved. All right, next on the agenda is public participation. I do not see any attendees, but Carla, is there any comments?
There was an email from Deborah McCutcheon that was sent out to everybody late this afternoon.
I did see that come through. So I saw that you did send that to the committee there. So thank you for that. All right. Seeing none over there, we'll move into Public Works. We do not have any for information items. However, we do have 4 action items. Now, just an update here or a comment here, and I'll also let the interim city administrator elaborate more on this. So as you may recall, the mayor has sent an email to the council on Friday asking the departments to do some work on the budgets to make sure that we can have a balanced budget for 2021. And therefore, that work is in progress right now. And therefore, the items that are posted tonight may be subject to a further change as they work through to make sure that the budget can be balanced. And as a result, the interim city administrator Cross informed me that the goal is that they want to get that done, I believe, by the end of this week, and would make sense that we would schedule a meeting to review those finalized budgets that have been being edited this week, sometime next week. And as a result, therefore, would be best that we postpone the item until we can get the latest next week. So let Steve elaborate more on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not much to add to it. I apologize on behalf of the staff here that we can't discuss it tonight, but a late call this afternoon with the mayor and given some direction with regards to some edits to the budget. It's requested that it's really not ready for action. Ms. Kaiser, who is also on this call, and I will be meeting with the department heads over the next 2 days to see about some suggested changes. We'll put it all together, and then the committee meetings. There are several scheduled for next week, and then unfortunately, this particular committee, we can't discuss it now, but we'll be in a position next Thursday. And I would assume that given the direction from the mayor, that the budget will be in a form and format and so forth that will be ready for discussion.
So with that, and then Councilmember Emmy, I'll get to you in just a second. I see you have your hand up. So with that, what we'll be looking for tonight would be that we'll motion to postpone. We can do that in one motion collectively, the budget items under Public Works here under for action, and that we would postpone to the next admin Public Works meeting, which would be, we would look to schedule that meeting. We'd have to have it sometime next week in order to meet the timeline that we have, as the city administrator said. So therefore, before we do get into the motion, I did see that one hand up. Councilmember Remy, do you want to say something?
I do. I have a question for ICA Cross. So is there any possible...
You stopped talking, your connection. Try again.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, start over again.
All right. I had a question for City Administrator Cross. So is there any possibility at the end of this year, or even the end of this fiscal year, that you would think that in 2020, with the cancellation of a lot of events and some things put on hold, even though we've got decreased revenue, that there's the possibility for that we actually will have a surplus at all? And if that were a possibility, that we would have some surplus even after the CARES money is given to us and those sorts of things, is it possible to put the surplus to next year's budget items so that we can continue to do a lot of the things that we were unable to do this year, but we could do it without having to cut more things?
Councilmember Remy, thank you for that question. So let me provide some guidance, and then our finance officer, Ms. Kaiser, can add to that. The first question is having to do with a potential surplus at the end of 2020. As you all probably know, we have applied for funding in St. Louis County under the CARES Act. This is part of the $2 trillion stimulus package that was passed by the federal government, which then trickled down to the state of Missouri, then to the county, St. Louis County, and then to the municipalities. We have applied for that, for our per capita, our portion of that money. We have not received the documents approving that. The interim communications that I've received indicates that everything is on track, but that money is not have been put into our account at this point. Assuming that we do get that money, the answer would be yes. We would then have a positive balance in the fund, or it would add to the fund. Now, what happens then is each year is a discrete year. So the fund balance, which now will be a higher number, hopefully based on that funding. So we'll be starting 2021 with a higher balance than we would have in the absence of that funding. However, with 2021, given the revenues and expenditures as projected at this point, that year then the expenditures exceed the revenues. And so the fund balance at the end of the projected fund balance at the end of 2021 is lower than going in by that amount of money. So as it stands right now, given the projects that are proposed, given the expenditures and given the revenues, 2021 currently has a gap between revenues and expenditures. So getting that funding certainly helps our beginning balance, but doesn't really help with 2021. Ms. Remy, hopefully that answers your question, sir.
No, it does. And just to be honest with you, I'm a little bit, even though I believe in maintaining an even balance in our budgeting, I'm not necessarily sure that if there are projects that we need to get done, and there's a lot of them, I guess the real question comes into play is, do we really need to balance this budget, or should we do the projects that are really necessary? And if that puts us slightly in the red and we've got to pull from our funds that we have, hopefully when the COVID pandemic substantially slows down after we come out of hopefully this winter season with appropriate therapies, one would hope that our revenue would increase over time and we would be able to build back up that funds. But I'm a little bit nervous to balance the budget for the sake of balancing the budget in a time of a pandemic when we actually have things we have to get done.
Councilmember Remy, you raise a very, very good point, sir. And different folks reviewing the budget have different opinions about what that reserve is there for. We are fortunate as a city that we have built up a substantial reserve, which means that revenues exceeded expenditures over the last umpteen years and maybe even 25 years. So we're blessed in that regard, in that we do have a good reserve. Now, having the not dipping into that reserve is at the prerogative of the council and the mayor in terms of how it is to be presented. The guidance that Ms. Kaiser and I have received is that that this budget should not dip into the reserve. One could look at it and say, well, it's there for a rainy day, or in the case of the city of Wildwood and the world for that matter, we have a rainy 2 years, 2020.
Right.
But that is certainly not my call, nor Ms. Kaiser's. That is you folks on the council in terms of what you'd like to see in consultation with the mayor in terms of what we want to do.
So then in that vein, then if it's possible, as things are cut or reduced over the next week or two, is it possible to create a column for those things for us to see easily what's been reduced or what's been cut, so that we're aware of it, so that if we do decide that we would want to move forward with using reserve for important projects, I'm not talking about parties and those sorts of things, but important projects that affect infrastructure, et cetera, that we at least know what the difference that was cut would look like as we move forward.
Absolutely, sir. And that is our intention. You all received the budget package on Friday. So you all see that currently, based on the budget as it stands right now, we are dipping into the reserve to the tune of $1.1 million. The changes the adjustments to the budget that the mayor has suggested to Ms. Kaiser and I, but this is going to be a bottom up. It's not a top down dictating. Dawn and I will be meeting with Rick and Joe and Julian and Laura, and we're going to give them some guidelines in terms of what they need to cut. But we will track those, and any report that we provide to you all will have a separate column, and it'll show you that, you know, if we eliminate that $1.1 million, here's where those items came from. Now, Mr. Remy, keep in mind, Dr. Remy, keep in mind that we have an operating budget and we have a capital budget, and the two are separate. I'm sure, I mean, you all are well versed in this, and you saw the capital budget, and we are a little underwater there, but that is not unusual. I think we've dipped into the capital budget reserve about $500,000, and Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's about that amount of money, but that is not unusual And I know, projects, in our meeting with Mr. Brown, some projects that really didn't appear that they were going to get started or get done in 2021 have been pushed out. The operating budget is really where we're focused on now, and that's the $1.1 million. And so those are things other than capital. The capital is not in those numbers, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I've got two hands up. I've got Councilmember Bertolino and then Edens. I'm kind of seeing them both at the same time. So if you guys have a preference, we'll do that. And then I did get a note from Councilmember Farmer. He's in the attendee list, so that would be him.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Go ahead, Dave.
Lauren's up.
Just want to hang on before we moved. Councilmember Farmer, can you just confirm? There you are. Perfect. All right. Go ahead,
Well,
Councilmember Bertolino. Or Councilmember Edens. Go ahead.
I was going to say that was very kind of you, Dave. One thing that I just am a little concerned about is if we are cutting costs for the types of products that we are asking our suppliers to use or bid that would cause more long-term costs, that would be information I would like to have. So for example, I really appreciated the Board of Public Safety and Rick Brown approving a painted stop bar for traffic control at Woodcliff Heights subdivision. That was done about a year ago and it's already significantly faded. So information that I'm looking for is, are we buying perhaps cheaper paint to balance the budget when the results are we're going to have to paint every year as opposed to every 2 years or every 3 years? And I know I've gotten a complaint as well on the crossing, sorry, the pedestrian crossing on Strecker as well. So I have seen some fading. So I just want to make sure that we're not sacrificing the type of product when we balance the budget. And that one section does need repainted.
Is that a question for Rick Brown, or are you
It is
expressing comment?
it's a comment, and if there's more applicable notes about the way we reduce the budget that comes back in that would help me know if I need to add money back for the sake of not balancing it, that would be helpful. I don't want to do a short-term reduction that's going to cost me more every single year.
Yeah, I'm sure Rick will take that under consideration. All right, Councilmember Bertolino, you're up next.
Steve, this is a question to you, and maybe just a nod of the head is going to be sufficient, but was the mayor's intent that we have a balanced budget overall or just the operating budget?
Operating budget is what we're focusing on right now, Mr. Bertolino.
The operating budget? Okay.
Yes, sir.
If you recall, folks, last year when we got to the crunch time, and in January, we didn't have a balanced budget. And I was one of the first ones to raise a red flag and say, hey, guys, what are we doing here? And Rick and at the time Sam and others they came back with a list of cuts. And the council got engrossed in that list of cuts. And I think we all agreed at the end of that was too late in the process. We wanted to be involved up front so there wouldn't be a requirement to just pick from A or B from a list at the end and say, we got to cut this. So what I'm driving at, Joe, and I know you want to cut a meeting short here, and I appreciate that, but the Rick and staff have laid out their plans for capital projects and road and bridge going forward. And is it worth our time to spend a few minutes looking at that, talking about it tonight? So when Steve and Rick and the others get back together to look at balancing, they've already got our input about what we think is sacrosanct and what we think might be arbitrary or able to reduce. And just my thought to you, Joe, you can take it from there.
I think I'll let Steve speak, but I thought the ask was kind of a bottom up approach. So I don't know, Steve, how you want to handle. Go ahead and answer that.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Berlino, I think it is best that we don't address the budget at all. The primary focus, but not the sole focus, is on the operating budget. But as I mentioned earlier, we do have a deficit in the capital budget as well, and there is some nexus between the two budgets. So I think at this point, since we're going back to the department heads and asking them to review their budgets, plural, potentially that if there is some cuts to be made to the operating budget, that may in fact affect the capital budget as well. So I think that the direction that Dawn and I have been given is to, and until the next meeting of the admin and PW committee, don't discuss the budgets at all, capital or operating. So if with all due respect, sir, if it's okay, we'd prefer to not talk about the budgets at all and just, it's a not ready for action. And if we can postpone it till the discussion until next week, that would be preferable, sir.
Okay, not a problem, Steve.
All right, appreciate the good dialogue, some really good questions. So with that, I guess what we'd like to do is we'd like to get a meeting on the calendar.
Larry Bro's hand is up.
Oh, Larry Brost. I thought he was
Dinner's
leaving.
ready.
All right, Larry, it is all yours. And
Well,
watch that pasta so it doesn't get
I am going to
overcooked.
agree with deferring, but it wouldn't be good if I didn't throw a wrench in it. I do agree with Dr. Remy. I think whether we balance the budget or not is one dimensional. I fail to see, and as we continue to look at this budget, I fail to see any improvement in how we look at the budget, how we execute the budget, and how we improve our process. And Steve, I have a lot of faith in you. I would be happy to meet and just go over stupid ideas I have on that. We can look at numbers and we can crunch numbers and beat numbers. And I'm a CPA, so I'm a numbers guy. But the only way you will change the numbers is to change the thought process and the overall process. And the biggest frustration I have with this city is the manner in which we execute our responsibilities. And I'm not saying that's going to be a big number, but we have so much we can improve on the process, and nowhere in our budget, and I think we had 21 tasks for next year or something, none of them, not one, addressed how are we going to do a better job. That's what we need to do. And that dividend that we will get when we take a 1 degree turn on starting to do a better job pays dividends year after year after year. So, Steve, I don't want to, I'm not objecting to if the process stays the same, but I really think that if Wildwood wants to be in the best performing cities group, I think we have to focus more on process and not just looking at where we cut a number, because it doesn't do it. I know we have areas where we can improve the process, and I've done it. So I'm happy to meet with you, Steve, and brainstorm. And if we come up with one good idea a year, I mean, it's money that we don't have to spend. I see how people operate, and every year I tell myself I can do a better job. So every year I'm just going to say, Larry, you can do a better job. So we all can improve. I don't see that anywhere in our budget process. I don't see it. We need to incorporate that in our budget process. It's our goals. It's if every person in a decision-making capacity in the city should have goals for this coming year. And they're not just numbers, right? They're not numbers. So, maybe in the next week or so, Steve, if you and Dawn would have time, I'd love to meet. I just think we add a different perspective to just, taking a sledgehammer. It's not, a sledgehammer works and then it doesn't work. So, but that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Brost, I think you would get no argument whatsoever from Ms. Kaiser and I. This is not an excuse or anything like that, but neither Ms. Kaiser or nor I have been part of the budgeting process in this regard. My role as treasurer is the financial oversight of the city, and so there's always been a city administrator who handles these details from Dan to Ryan and so forth. And unfortunately, much to my chagrin, is that Ms. Kaiser was not included in those machinations. And so this is her first time actually being part of the budgeting process to this degree. And that I have sat in this chair in 2019 was for a period of 9 months from January to mid-September before the budgeting process took place. And now I was asked to come in at the tail end of the budgeting process and clean it up. My initial thoughts are that the schedule was far too aggressive and far too condensed to give anyone time to really review the process. The goals, the 5-year goals and so forth are rather vague and in a lot of cases a repetition of the previous year's goals. I would welcome heartily sitting down with you. Half of my career, when I worked for billion-dollar companies, I was head of strategic planning and forecasting and so forth. So I know what planning is about and budgeting. And so I have my own ideas. I don't know if I'll be around to implement, help implement them for the start of the 2022 budget. But Dawn and I would be more than happy to sit down and brainstorm with you and see how we might be able to incorporate the great ideas that I'm sure you have into the next budgeting process. Right now, we're just scrambling just to get this done. We're dealing with the cards we've been dealt, and we have to get the budget for 2021 as the mayor wants it to see. And then after we get this budget put to bed, so I'm not sure meeting in the next week or so. Quite honestly, I don't think we have the time right now because we've got to get this budget done. But once we put this to bed, we definitely would love to sit down with you and start early and build in a better process. And I'm sure there's many ways that we can do that. So it's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for this because Dawn and I really kind of fell into our laps, but we're more than willing to make, improvements. And so I thank you for the offer and for helping us.
Yeah,
All right.
Steve, I mean, I agree. I mean, you're in the battle right now and we don't have time to, you're in the battle. So, but yeah, I would like to do that. I would, so maybe it's a December or something, but yeah, I'd like to do that because I think that we have to start incorporating, there's just things we have to start thinking about. I have observed such inefficiency in the city. And what we have to do is grab it and kick it and change it. That inefficiency is dollars. And we have to change that. And so, yeah, I'll try to be tactful, but I am a results person. Because I am a numbers guy. Numbers, hey, you got to get numbers. But thank you. And I understand. But I also agree with Dr. Remy is that whether we're balanced or not is not relevant. It's how we best use the funds. So, but I agree. You're in the battle right now, and I appreciate you stepping up. As I mentioned, or maybe I appreciate you stepping up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. All right. Moving on. I do have a question from Councilmember Farmer and then Councilmember Remy.
Yeah, thanks. So Steve, this is, I guess for you, it's more of sort of a philosophy question. I agree 100% with Larry and Ken on really everything that they're both saying. For me, I've heard from the beginning of my time here about balancing the budget and being very cautious with taxpayer money. And I fully appreciate that as much as the next person. But I have a issue trying to understand, we have money in the bank for, I would think of it as a rainy day fund, and I can't think of a much rainier day than we're currently living in. So I guess my question for you, I mean, from my business standpoint, we've used this as a kind of a reset. So to Larry's point, looking at the budget in a creative way. I mean, you can, numbers aren't always in the spreadsheet. You can cut your nose off to spite your face trying to balance something out. So I guess my question is, I heard you earlier say some people look at it as a rainy day fund, some people see it as something else. What would the other thing be? I legitimately don't know what else you would use this for other than a massive global pandemic that shuts the entire planet down.
Councilmember Farmer, I guess what I was alluding to in my statement was that you can look at it as a rainy day fund or a rainy year fund as it is now, or that it's that one way or another, we're going to have a budget that is where the revenues equal the expenditures. And that is the guidance that Ms. Kaiser and I are given at this point, is that we are to do everything that we can and go back and meet with the folks here at City Hall, the department heads, and find a way to reduce costs, because the revenue assumptions you all received Friday, or I'm sorry, on Monday, we got them on Friday, we didn't discuss them at council meeting on Monday. They are conservative estimates, but they are not ultra conservative. They are reasonable estimates in terms of what we expect 2021 to be versus 2020. And there's not a whole lot of difference, but there is an infrastructure in place right now. There's a cost to doing business, and the current budget reflects that. But if the direction is to reduce those costs in whatever manner possible to make sure they equal the revenues, that's the direction we need to take. So you can look at the fund. Someone could look at that fund and provide direction, a different direction, but that's the direction that Ms. Kaiser and I have been given at this point.
That makes sense. I mean, I just think, we have an opportunity. I think we've all talked for a while in here that, there were some concerns about the budgeting process going through most of this year that I can remember. And so I think, we got to do what we got to do to get through this period of time, but I think we do really need to look creatively at how we do things, because just continuing to try, we need to build in efficiencies, but continuing to try to shave off dollars on, whether it's different kind of paint or cutting down one tree instead of two trees, even though they're right next to each other. Like at a certain point, it just sort of becomes a little bit absurd. So I'm all for whatever we can do to get this thing working in the right direction.
I agree with that. And so anyone, Mr. Brost or Mr. Farmer or anybody that wants to sit down and give us your ideas, again, there's an opportunity now, once we put this budget to bed, however it gets put to bed and whatever the numbers are, that's what the numbers are. But we have basically not quite a year. And like I say, maybe I'll be around, maybe I won't, I don't know. But as long as I'm here, I will help implement and get started with the input from you all. And Dawn is quite willing to do the same thing. Maybe we can lay the groundwork so that the budget for 2022 is better and maybe more efficient than it is right now. So it's a great time to start that, be it November or December. Once we get this budget put to bed, then we can do that. So I thank all of you for your comments and for your input. I don't disagree with anything that you've said. I have not been in a position before to try to implement those or help implement those, but you have a commitment now that as long as I'm sitting in this chair, I will try to do at least lay the groundwork, even if I'm not around come budget time.
Councilmember Remy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's comments thus far, because I'm in full agreement that this is not a rainy day. This is a tempest. This is a flood. That's the largest flood we've ever seen. But I do think it's the opportunity for us to get a little bit creative and even consider making our 2021 budget even with a phased approach, meaning we can have our upfront budget and then consider mid-year budget adjustment as needed, depending on how things look at that point. But there's another area that I did want to bring up, and I really hope that we can give this some consideration in the next week or two, which is our city employees are second to none. There's not a better municipality, I think, where our city employees run such a lean machine. But I will tell you that my thoughts would be, I would really like to punt to our department heads to ask them upfront heading into 2021, do they need an increase in their complement of personnel? And I'd like to see what that would look like on paper, because quite frankly, I understand that we're in a dire situation perhaps with just trying to balance things, but I really feel strongly that having more personnel to perhaps help with the current programming that we have, the different things that are needed for enforcement and those sorts of things are important. And I'd really like to see if we could ask department heads if they need 1 or 2 or 3 more people for the city, and and at least include that in a budget as a separate item so that we could evaluate that in the totality of our balancing procedures. And then one more piece I would just say to that point is, small businesses, certainly private citizens, are struggling during this pandemic. I do agree absolutely with Councilmember Farmer. If it means that we need to dip in reserve to do the things that make our citizens happy in their community, safe in their community, to me, that's what we should do, because this is that tempest for which we should be using that funds.
Dr. Remy, if I may, Mr. Chair, if I can just add just one more comment to that. We're happy to do that as part of it in our discussions with the department heads. And I dare say that when we put that question to Mr. Vunich and to Mr. Brown, I don't think either one of them are going to say, no, they got enough staff. They're cool. They're covered. Don't think I'm going to hear that. But you're absolutely right. This staff is second to none. The amount of work and what they turn out is absolutely incredible. I've been in private practice for 45 years, and I have never, and you all have heard me say this before, and I'll say it again, I've never, ever been associated with a team that works harder, is more competent, is more dedicated than the team that's here at City Hall. Bar none. Absolutely bar none. And I don't say that lightly. So they are stretched very thin, and it shows sometimes in the morale where they get down. So that's one way. Now, I'll tell you what, there's something else that you all might want to think about. And remember, recommendations from this committee on up the line, mean something. So if there's a particular direction that you all are thinking about, we have a process in place in which to have those recommendations heard and so forth. So I will leave that to this committee to deal with that. But something that Ms. Kaiser and I want to make perfectly clear to you all, and then ultimately needs to go to council. I have had conversations with the mayor that our revenue stream is not a sustainable model. I'm not telling you something that you don't already know, but we need to be thinking about where our sources of revenue are going to come from in the future. 50% of our revenue comes from the sales tax pool. That's changing now. That is a big part of why our revenues are down as much as they are. It's not the only line item, but it's the biggest line item. There will be some improvement when this pandemic hopefully ends, but even though our census may go up, we don't have those numbers yet. We've requested them, but we don't know how much they might go up. But that increase in census could be offset by just people's spending habits and where they buy their product. That's why, fortunately, we have Mr. Garitano on the MML and keep us apprised of Wayfair and other legislation. But this committee and council as a whole and the mayor need to begin thinking about the future in terms of property tax, and other kinds of sources of revenue, and not just increasing fees. That's not going to do it in the long run. So it is expenses. That's the issue du jour right now. But there's a longer term perspective that we all need to be thinking about.
Well, I don't see any other speakers. Oh, Mr. Councilmember Rambo, Councilmember Edens, I also have some comments to share as well. So go ahead, Councilmember Rambo.
Yes, this is just real quick. I always, I've been preaching the gospel of Wildwood City employees for years, and I just want to second that thought. But also, we have lots of expertise on the council, like phenomenal expertise. We're lucky to have legitimate COVID expertise, et cetera. If Councilmember Brost is an actual CPA, I'm wondering if he was offering to just have a brainstorming session, which is what it sounded like, or if there's something that he could do sort of independently that wouldn't take away from the city staff's, budget cycle crunch, but might still help us out with some of those issues that he was mentioning. If so, we wouldn't have to necessarily formalize that process, but I think it sounded great to me. And the problem seemed to be that the staff doesn't have time to entertain it. And so I was just suggesting that maybe Councilmember Brost could do some independent analysis and maybe shoot some bullet points to us or something like that. I don't know how it would work, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
All right.
That's all.
Thanks, Rob. All right, Councilmember Edens.
I wanted to make one comment and then go ahead and give you the motion on the floor. And it's just that if there is a project that we would like to do but isn't necessary for public safety, I would rather delay that project on that list and put that towards the salary and benefits of an employee. I mean, that's where I'm at on that. So if that comes back as part of the proposal, that would be great. So I'd like to motion to postpone.
Could I,
yes.
if you don't mind, because once you make the motion, the comments have to be relevant to the motion. I just wanted to make a comment about, in line with what we've been talking about. So if that's okay, can I come right back to you in just a second?
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I've heard there's been some really good discussion here, and I think that's good to kind of have everyone be able to share and air kind of where their mind is, where their thoughts are on how to approach things. I think that's good. It helps us to understand where we are, and I certainly can relate to a lot of the comments that are here tonight. I just want to say, first of all, that we're in such a great position as a city to be able to have a general fund that I think at the beginning of 2020 was somewhere around $15 million. And then that's the general reserve. So then you have a contingency that's built in there as well. We're in a great place. I looked through the budgets of all the nearby cities near us just to see how we were in relation. And we probably were at the top of the list when it came to having that kind of bucket, that savings. I mean, Baldwin was at about 12.1 million. You had Chesterfield at 8.4, Town and Country at 8.2, Eureka was at about 5.7, and our neighbors Ellisville were about 2.1 million. This is what they have in their general reserve. And so to be in a position where we are, we've been putting money away for years, and therefore that is something that we've never had to go in and dip into this bucket there. However, we are running into something that is unexpected. This is that bump in the road that, that's why we have this general fund that is there to help us cushion an impact when something like this happens. However, I think what I'm really interested in is knowing what the new normal will be, because at some point, we have to revisit the question of whether our spending is in line with our revenues, and therefore, is that a sustainable model? We can cushion it for a year because we think this is maybe just that one bump in the road and, enough to get us by. But if the data tells us that in the future that the revenues are not going to recover to where they were, then we definitely have to revisit our expenditures. I mean, that's just basic fiscal management. It's the same way you would approach your budget and your bills at home. And there are even some neighbor cities to us that anticipate exhausting their general fund by the middle of next summer. And they will be in a position where they will not have it. And I've also heard in discussions that we should expect to see cities in the state that will not be able to make their debt payments as soon as this December. So it's something that I think we just need to keep an eye out. And, not that we want to go and celebrate and say, look, we got this money and it's business as usual, but it is certainly something that we need to be realistic about how we approach it. And I think if it's just a 1-year deal, we certainly can find a way to cushion it, but we don't want to be a city where, you've already heard it, from our neighbors where they were looking at potential furlough and stuff like that. Chesterfield, there was a fundraiser to help pay the difference in the decrease that they put into their police department. I think they took a 10% pay cut in order to save jobs there. So, I think we'll have lots of good discussion, but I wanted to throw it out there what my thoughts were. So, Councilmember Edens, if you want to go ahead and make that motion. Oh, Councilmember Bros, did you want to make a motion, or was that?
I just wanted, Joe, on your point, and maybe Steve, if you could, if we go back historically, can we look at when our reserves were built? Because I mean, like when did Wildwood, over what periods of time, what years? And I think what we're going to find is they were built in the early years, but when were the reserves built? And what have we been doing, say, the last 10 years versus? So like Joe, I think you raised a really good point. It's wonderful. We have 15 million. Where did that 15 million, what years did we develop those money? And, Steve, if that's something possible to do. Rob, to your point, I'm happy to meet with the city weekly, but I'm not inclined to meet. I'm not inclined to do an independent analysis because we need to have one team. I want to work with the city. I don't want to work along with the city. And again, I'll just go back to is my thought process here is not a 90 days. This is a culture change. We look at things differently. It doesn't happen that quick. These are habits. I mean, we all have habits. I get up every morning and I make a cup of coffee. It's not going to change. It's very difficult to change habits. I just think we need to look at how we look at things, and original thought and all that doesn't happen between 2 and 4 if we have a meeting once a month. We just meet. But, Steve and Dawn and Ned, I would be happy to do that, but I would rather do it as a team. I'll invest the time, Rob, but I don't want to go in and start creating something separate from what the city might do.
I wasn't suggesting that. What I know about accounting consists of being able to spell CPA. And I've been in the business world my whole life. I just never paid adequate attention to the budgetary processes. And so I'm ignorant of what you were suggesting. And I assumed that maybe you had seen some low-hanging fruit in terms of process that you could throw out that we could talk about implementing immediately. I wasn't suggesting that you as a CPA would do an independent audit or anything of that nature at
the whole
all.
thing is, an audit is a whole different perspective. An audit is wonderful. I was an auditor for years. It's wonderful.
I'm in a process audit.
But it's nothing about what I'm talking about. I'm talking about process.
Sure.
Nothing to do with process. But Steve, if we could figure out when did those reserves develop, I would, because I think I know the answer on how they developed.
Mr. Bros, that is easily done. We can do that tomorrow. We can go back 10 years or more. I'm not sure Dawn can tell me exactly how far back. We can go back to the beginning, but we can show you, and Dawn's hand is up, so she'll give it, but we can easily do that. It's in the computer and we can tell you all pretty quickly, but it sounds like Dawn wants to.
Dawn,
I can say that Councilmember Brost is absolutely correct. Our fund reserves did build substantially in the earlier years, starting back when the city was incorporated. The amount that we've been able to put aside has gone down each year, most recently more significantly. But you're absolutely correct. We were able to build that fund balance more in the early years. Some changes that have taken place that have increased our expenditures is the expansion of some additional employees. Our personnel costs are still significantly lower than every other city. Because we have the option to subcontract out, we are able to cut costs more easily rather than cut personnel by just directing contractors, to cut services rather than cut personnel and benefits for others, actual people that work here. So I'd welcome also any advice or guidance that you have on how we can change the way things are done. I've been doing this a long time, and I would appreciate any new ideas. Steve's been a great help. Sorry. Steve's been a great help to me because he gets where this is all going from. He's also been around. But any new ideas, we would welcome those. And anything you can think of that we could immediately do that, I'd appreciate that as well. So
one of the things that you all may or may not be aware of is that, and I guess Dawn, and correct me if I'm wrong, by city code or guidelines, we, and I forget what year it was established, but way back when, we set aside 15% of our total operating expenses every year into that fund. That's a hard and fast.
It's actually 25%, Steve.
It's 25%. Sorry about that. So we set aside each and every year 25% of our operating fund into this reserve. There are other factors that are hitting that reserve, as Dawn just mentioned. But we've been doing that. I forget when that legislation was passed, or if that goes all the way back to the beginning, Dawn. But 25% every year gets socked away in our savings account, if you will.
Yeah.
I think we had a lot of great discussion.
Thank you.
We'll have more next week. And, so Miss Councilmember Edens, do you want to go ahead and make that motion to postpone? But
yes.
we probably want to decide, though, on when that meeting will occur, if we want to put it into the motion, or you just can say to the next meeting, and then we'll make sure that we just determine that date today.
Okay. And I did want to make, one more comment as well. I know that several of us were concerned about the tree replanting budget for trees besides ash trees. We've all gotten resident complaints, and I'm not saying that we should do this, but I did look at what other cities have done, and because they've ran out of money, they've offered a smaller rebate program so that if the homeowner goes out and plants the trees because they want results now and not on a waiting list, that they get a small check back rather than the city paying for the full cost of the tree. So I would hate to have to do that, but that would be nice to offer, some angry residents that might otherwise be waiting quite a long time. But there might be some other creative things that we can do modeled after other cities to help with the overall budget cut. And that city is Baldwin, that is currently doing that. So I'd like to make a motion that number 1, 2, and 3 under 4 action of Public Works are postponed until the next meeting to occur on Thursday, October 22nd, or as determined by the committee.
All right. Is there a second for that motion? All right, made by Councilmember Farmer, but
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but should that motion also include the items, or will that be a separate motion?
I think we'll do a separate motion since that's a separate for action under administration. We'll stay with the agenda here. So we'll do these 3 here, and then we'll do the same motion for those items in a second. Any objection to that by the group? All right. So we did have the motion made by Councilmember Edens and seconded by Councilmember Farmer. So is there any discussion? I know that we had been trying to float a date as we were getting the meeting started of when we could meet again. And it looked like next Thursday. would be a date that seemed to work for everyone, the 22nd.
Could we consider the Monday, the 26th before the city council meeting?
So Monday, the 26th before the city council. So I'm assuming you're thinking like
4:30.
5 to 6 or
Yeah.
4:30. So do you all want to just take a quick second and look at your calendars and see if that can work for you all?
But question, will we be voting on any of these items on that city council agenda and not have any time to stew over it if we have an adjustment?
The schedule, grab it here real quick for you all. The current budget schedule shows that the council meeting on the 26th, the work session has an in-depth review of operating expenditures by departments, a review of the 2021 capital improvement plan, and a review of the 5-year capital improvement plan. So, Edens, that does not give Dawn and I time to assimilate all that information and put it into a package to be discussed at the work session on the 26th if we did it prior to that. So that would be a little tough to do, quite honestly.
So we do have again, the motion is on the floor, but obviously this is related to the motion. So is the date that Lauren mentioned, Thursday, an issue for anyone? Is someone not able to make it to the 22nd of October?
I am a high probable, but not confirmed yet.
So
Yeah, I don't know that I can confirm the 22nd either.
you cannot. Is that
I'm
right?
not. Yeah, I'm not sure if I can. Yeah.
So is there another date next week that would work for folks? I believe the only issue I saw was Monday because Larry is liaison to P&Z, or we could do it before P&Z. If that would work for folks, that would be Monday the 19th. Assume that would be what time you start, Larry? Is it are they meeting just at 7 or?
I think it's just at 7. Yeah, I think it's just at 7. I don't think there's a review meeting prior.
Yeah,
just to offer an alternative, is there a daytime that with Dr. Remy and others that, may be more feasible?
I mean, I could do that 19th if you guys want to do a 5 to 7 or something, or 5 to 6. I think Tuesday is Parks and Planning, if I'm
right.
correct.
That is correct. Yeah. So, and then Wednesday, I believe there was something else on Wednesday that.
So on Tuesday, there's not only the planning and parks, but also economic development. Economic development is 5:30 and planning and parks is at 7. On Wednesday, there's a Ward 2 meeting. And there's also the watershed
education or
task force subcommittee meeting on Wednesday, the 21st as well.
Which subcommittee is that?
The education one.
Yeah, the education.
Oh, okay.
We're getting things done.
So Dr. Remy, is Monday at 5 look better for you?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
So Monday, what did I hear? 5 o'clock Monday?
Yeah, he needs to get a vaccine done.
It's true.
All right. So no objections to Monday.
Steve, does that work for you and Dawn?
Monday, the 19th?
I mean, to have stuff, would it be enough time to be ready?
Dawn is nodding her head yes.
We will be meeting with everybody tomorrow and Friday. Hopefully we can get them all done tomorrow. That leaves Friday to be able to put all the stuff together, and then we can finish up. So I think we can have the budget documents ready for a late, afternoon, 5 o'clock on Monday. Where's Dawn? Dawn, you good with that?
I think it's possible. And I just wanted to mention that the reason that a lot of this seems like it's last minute is that we don't have the numbers available from the current year estimates in order to project. And also The police contract, that isn't normally ready. We had to push for that this year. Our benefits information, we just have to give a ballpark on that because it's not ready. So I apologize if it seems like it's all last minute and we're trying to cram it all in, but there really isn't a lot of time. And we want to present good numbers and not just, random numbers when we're trying to get this information out to you. And yeah, even if I have to work Saturday and Sunday, I'll get it done because it just needs to get done.
Okay, so I think we're hearing then that Monday. So the motion was made. Would there be any objection if we just revise the motion to specify that date, or? No objection, Lauren, you're the maker of the motion. Do you want to just revise it?
With consent, the language in the motion was "or as determined by the committee," so we should be good. I put the "or" in there.
Okay, so that sounds fair. All right, so Carla, do you have the motion? All right, everybody understand the motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any oppose? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have under administration, we have no 4 information items, and we have 3 for action items that are again related to the budget. So therefore, if someone would like to make a motion that is similar to that, or similar to the one we just voted on for the
point of order.
Huh?
Point of order. We left out the action item for the grant to approve as department recommended.
That's right. That was one item I knew we would do. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so moving back up.
While I have the floor, I'd like to
Oh,
make
the
a
trim
motion.
grant. This was
I'd
supposed
like
to
to
be
make
a
a
short
motion.
meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve as recommended by the department the $9,885 to replant the 83 ash trees in the agreement with MDC.
Well, that is right to the point there, Rick. Oh, well, you go ahead, make the motion. Is there a second on that motion? Made by Councilmember Brost. Right, Rick, do you want to comment on that item? And then we'll see if there's any questions.
I'm certainly available for any questions. Again, we'd like to move forward, and we've done this in previous years. We have received trim grants and we have used them for ash tree planting. So every year they say they will not award them for this purpose, but we put in for it anyway, and we've gotten them. So we were fortunate this year. I will mention to the committee, one of the things we're planning to do with the grant is, and on the advice of our arborist, is actually planting a smaller tree than we might have planted in the past. So there's some reasons for doing that. Obviously, a smaller tree is cheaper, and so we can stretch the money further. But the arborists are also telling us that it's really the smarter choice is to go with a smaller tree, and I'm talking about a 1 to 1.5 inch diameter size tree. They have a much better mortality rate, and over time they'll catch up with that bigger tree that you plant. So it's always nice to put the big tree out there, but the reality is the smarter approach really is to go with a smaller tree up front and then plant more trees, and then they catch up over time with that bigger tree, and then they're more likely to survive than that bigger tree might be. So that's one thing I did want to mention with the grant. But other than that, I'm certainly available for any questions. And let me add one more thing real quick, if that's all right. Just to be, I know we've been involved, you have been very involved in the EAB response program that we put together. We have removed about 120 trees already, I believe, at this point in time. So this grant will replant 83 trees. We still have a deficit to make up. I would like to take advantage of the low bid that we received earlier in the year from Omni, and assuming that there is money in our 2020 budget, look at actually planning more than this if that's possible. I have not approached Omni with that, and I need to take a look at our budget for 2020 yet to see that money is available. But the price that we have for this tree is $120 a tree, so it does go quite far. So that's one thing relative to the discussion about replanting that I wanted to mention. And again, I'm available for any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Rick? All right, Councilmember Rambo. And again, we have that motion on the floor, so.
Yes, that's, I think this speaks to that motion as well as Rick's comments. Yeah, I want to be sensitive to the desire to make this a short meeting as well. So maybe we can table a good bit of what I'm hoping to bring up, and that is the Planning and Parks Committee meeting has an agenda item to revisit our plantings list because it hasn't been updated since the 90s, and it's quite problematic. We've planted some invasives and some foreign plants of all kinds and plants that are inappropriate for other reasons. And we're going to be revisiting the list of suggested trees for replanting. I, as an arborist myself, have no real problems with it, but there may be other choices. We may be able to get, better pricing for some other trees and so on and so forth. So my real question is, and maybe I can take this offline with Rick, is how do we determine which trees on this list go where? And if we have any flexibility to maybe go look for other trees maybe do the city a little bit better long-term than just playing from this list here. I also just want to mention that I'm in complete and total agreement with the idea that a smaller caliper tree is going to do better. It's going to pass the larger tree probably within a year or two, and there's a whole lot less fallout and death along the way. So it just makes lots of sense. Plus, they're cheaper. So, Rick, did you want to address that planting list now, or do you want us to take it offline?
Well, I will tell you that the department's been working with Davie Resource Group, and you've heard from those folks at previous meetings, Amy Bird specifically. So he's been guiding the choice of trees that we're planting, by and large, based on his recommendations. And they did include a bunch in the list that's actually in the trim grant, but he will be involved in the selection, the specific selection, working with Omni. I mean, I'd be glad to talk to you since you seem to have some very specialty skills there. I'd be glad to talk with you in more detail, maybe offline, if that works.
That sounds great. I just wanted to throw it out to the group that we are rethinking our plantings list and offer my support for the idea that small caliper trees are a better choice. That's it. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Rambo. All right, so we have the motion on the floor. Carla, do you have the motion? All right, good. All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
oppose? Any abstain? All right, that motion passes. All right, now we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, administration for action. We have those 3 items, and then as we discussed, we'll be looking for a motion to postpone to the next meeting. So Councilmember Edens, do you want to make that motion? Will it be worded the same way as your other one, or do you want to?
It'll be worded as to postpone the 4 action items, number 1, number 2, and number 3 under administration for the next meeting date.
All right, there we go. Second by Councilmember Bertolino. That's who I saw there first. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any oppose? Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. Great. All right, then next, we do not have any other items. We have items that are obviously and they're not ready for action. So we'll be visiting some of the items back on the 27th meeting. So we do have 2 more meetings this month. And anything under miscellaneous? All right, seeing none, hearing none. And then obviously the next meeting date, you are aware, we will be meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, the 19th at 5 p.m. All right, adjournment. Made by Councilmember Flasher, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right. Thank you all. Good meeting. Appreciate
Thank you.
the discussion.